Hi, everyone. My name is Heather Haynes. I'm the Director of Programming here at Hot Docs, and I'm very, very pleased to have Director Hasan Oswald with us today. He's the director of Mediha, and this film, I think, is one of the most important films that has been made this year. I think it is very timely and speaks to very much the global climate that we're in right now. So, Hasan, thank you so much for joining us today.
Of course, thank you so much for having me.
I just want to start out by, giving the audiences who have just seen your film some context for how this film began for you.
Sure, yeah. I was in the region at the time of the genocide, which was 2014. So at the end of 2014, 2015, I was in the region working on a different film. The genocide, of course, had just happened. So while this project was based on the Syrian civil war, many of the people I met in the refugee camps around Europe and in Turkey, many of them were not Syrian. And it just happened that my translator, Amal, she was Yazidi. So while I had heard of the Yazidi story here and there, I had never really gotten the full picture. And so after we were done filming, we'd often spend evenings with Amal's family, friends who had just escaped and just left Iraq. So through this, I sort of started to learn about their tortured past. This is, by their count, the 74th genocide committed against them. And I sort of, at the time, I didn't have the resources or honestly, the know-how of to tell this story how I thought it should be told. So I kept that seed. I shelved it away as something, that I wanted to tell in the future. And then in 2018, I read an article that at the time there were still 3,000 plus Yazidis in ISIS captivity or otherwise missing. And that was sort of the spark that sent me over. I had, I think I set out to tell this story through a more, I guess, a more classic documentary lens. And after the first few weeks there, I just saw that, we needed a different avenue in, we needed a different pathway forward. And I had been interested for a while in the power dynamic between filmmaker and participant, just ways to sort of experiment with that and perhaps rebalance it in ways. I was very influenced by the first documentary I ever saw, which was Born into Brothels, where they teach the street kids of Calcutta photography, and that had always stuck with me. And we're at a time in with gear and tech where you can get 4K cameras. Most people have them right on their cell phones, or as Mediha had that little wandering around gimbal. And so I just thought let's see how. Let's see what we can get. And I taught Mediha and her brothers the basics of cinematography and just let them have at it for a month or so. And, we never could have imagined with what force Mediha would grab the reins of the narrative. But yeah, the plan was just to tell this story in a different way. We wanted a different way in.
Mm-hmm. And I truly think that you have done this film in such a sensitive way and in your collaboration with Mediha. And I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about, how you first met her and her family, because, there, as we know, there's so much trauma there. But you convey that you have built trust. How did that begin for you?
Yeah. Well, we met Mediha. I there was no she's one in a million, really. And there's no way this story gets told the way that it does without her. And without, her siblings, honestly, as well, and her community just willing to open up in the midst of, they are dealing with a collective trauma that hasn't even begun. The surface layers have not begun to be uh, that story has not begun to be told until we have. Mediha has scratched the surface, of course, but despite that, they let us into their world to tell that story. I think as far as yes, it's a traumatic story not only what happened to Mediha, but what happened to them as a whole. And you have to approach this with not just, sensitivity. You have to approach it with patience. I think one of the big things is that, when we arrived and we met Mediha and her brothers, and her community, we made them the promise of time that, this was not going to be, we were going to be here as long as it took to tell this story. And that ended up, being 4.5 years on and off, that we were back and forth in the region. And that set a very strong foundation as far as building trust with Mediha and her brothers and her community. It wasn't just, we predominantly didn't film when we were with them. It was homework help. It was taking them on picnics. It was sort of just supporting them. We found that, as the process progressed, Mediha actually began to use the film and the filmmaking process as a form of healing. Again, I had given her the cameras and of course, in the back of my mind, hoped that she would regain some semblance of agency after what she had been through. But we found very early on that she was using it as a tool to heal. And so it became sort of, how do we continue to provide the tools and the proper platform and the guardrails and all of that? How do we continue to provide that just to get her what she needs inside the film and outside the film? And that continues to this day as she's in New York City here, where I'm based in high school. She's made incredible progress. So we just wanted to make sure that from the beginning, we kept them, if we were going to do a collaboration, it had to be a collaboration, not just within the filmmaking process, but within, post-production, within the festival run, and now within the whole difficult distribution process.
Yes. Yeah, that is for sure, especially nowadays with distribution. And, I'm, with the ongoing genocide, which I think, is important to address, that this has not stopped. And, it's been 74 iterations of this. And, it's my understanding that tensions are also, rising again
Yes.
right now. And, Mediha just comes out as, a leader in so many different ways in this film. I was wondering if you could talk about, that the complications. We see it in the film, but, a bit more of having to come back into a community that is still undergoing genocide. More is coming. There has been no collective, healing.
Yeah.
You can't do that when, you're still, under these kinds of
Yeah.
situations. Can you talk about what it was like for Mediha to be making, this film also within her community? How did people respond to that?
Yeah, and it's very true what you say. As Mediha always says in her Q&As, the genocide is ongoing. It was the 10-year anniversary since the start of the genocide in August of this year, and all the issues seen in the film, not only are they unresolved, they are, in most cases, significantly worse. So while making this, that's of course, we wanted to refocus some, a few international headlines maybe splashed across our screens in 2014, 2015. Since then, nothing. So yes, we wanted to refocus, a bit of a spotlight back on the Yazidi cause. But the whole time we had to be very cognizant of the fact that Mediha, the girl, was going through this journey of healing with the film and through the film in parallel to what her people were going through. So yes, as she became sort of an advocate for her people, we again were very cautious with expectations, making it clear, Mediha, you don't have to be the next Malala. You don't have to go to a single film festival. And of course she shooed us off. She loved the film festivals and she sat in on every screening. She just loves the film and its message. And he says watching it every time makes her feel strong. So we just wanted to be very cognizant of the fact that Um, Eventually the spotlight will fade. The film, we're nearing that. The film is has made had an incredible journey, but life after the film for Mediha is even more important for the filmmakers, to make sure that as much as we can, we are there to shepherd her life in the right direction. And so as she was making the film, and one of the first lines is like she's, about how she's afraid to speak out. Um, and we addressed that with her from the beginning, that, this uncle or that relative or that village, that person in that village may not like that you're speaking out. And she said, well, it's my story, I'm going to tell it. And so, we had endless workshops on consent and continuous consent and all of this. And at the end of it, she said, she's very, very strong-willed. And she said, why do you keep asking me if I want to tell my story? And so, she was 18 at the time. And we just said, yeah, you're right. Like, she wants to tell the story. We're going to continue to provide the platform and the tools for her to best do that, and give her guidance along the way. So, the response from from the UZD community has been very, very strong towards the film.
Mhm.
That's not, the universal response, of course. There's, she deals with backlash here and there. It does not significantly set her back anymore. She understands that it's an ancient religious and cultural, it's an ancient religion and culture that can't be expected to change, should not be asked to change this drastically within 10 years, especially, as you said, when they're dealing with unresolved collective trauma from this happening for the last hundreds and hundreds of years. So she has not, so she lives in America, so she has not re-entered the Yazidi community in that way. And to be honest, I think that her path as kind of a blossoming advocate, whatever form that takes, and it's now veering more toward education and sort of crushes and being a teenage girl, although now she's 20. It's sort of organically going that way. But we just wanted to make sure that she's in America, so she doesn't have to deal with being in the village when this came out. But we've made the film that if it had come out when she was in that same village, there would be no issues.
Mhm.
And we've found that there's no politics in the film. We didn't touch on the contentious Turkish Kurdish issue, the Kurdish Iraqi issue, just all the regional conflicts that the Yazidis often get caught up in. We didn't talk about them, not because we didn't have our views or we didn't want to, but because Mediha never talked about them. This was her voice. This was her message. And so I think that's very, very hard to argue with. So as far as we found that to be the exact case with the Yazidi community. Yes, she talks about difficult subjects, but it's very, very hard to argue about what she's talking about, because that is what happened and that is what she went through and that is her truth. So we have a lot of support from within the Yazidi community. Of course, it's not universal, but she remains as steadfast as ever of continuing to share this story and continuing to talk about the Yazidi plight.
Yeah. I, I mean, we don't have too much time left, but I think it's important when you say she doesn't have to be the next Malala,
Yeah.
And she is a young woman who has experienced many things, and she has a right to pursue her own life and dreams and
Yeah.
goals. And maybe you could just give a quick update as to, I guess she's in school in New York now.
Yeah.
What, you know?
Yeah. And yeah, we always gave her the chance throughout the whole process to walk away from the film. Just
Mhm.
if you just want to be a teenager, go be a teenager. If you don't want this to come out to the world, it won't come out to the world. If you don't want to come to film festivals, whatever role you want in this is what we're going to honor. So yes, she's in New York now. She's doing a GED program to get prepared for high school. To get prepared for university. She wants to be a human rights lawyer, of course. to represent not just women and girls like her from her community, but also she sees now that she's out of Iraq, and she sees, after film festivals or in her Instagram direct messages, she receives such amazing messages of support. You inspired me to speak out. Thank you for making this movie, from girls that are not Yazidi, from girls who have gone through similar things in America and South America, and really all around the world. So I think that's sort of created this spark within her that this is not a Yazidi, this is not a regional issue, this is a worldwide issue, and that's the direction she's heading in.
Oh, that's incredible. And we need people like her more than ever now. So,
Agreed.
yeah. Well, Hasan, thank you so much for joining us and sharing your film Mediha with us. And please also give, our best to Mediha and her family and the whole film team. Thank you.
Thank you so much.